Okay, welcome everyone. Welcome to the deep dive on time travel mode and the flight history reporting. Very happy to have everybody here. While we get started, please, if you could mute yourself so that you only unmute when you have a question. That way we can keep the background noise to a minimum. First off, let me just get a quick show of hands. And if you're not sharing your video, just give me a thumbs up or thumbs down as a reaction. How many of you been through the intro classes? Intro classes, good stuff. All right. Quick show of hands. How long have you been using SkyGlass? Less than 6 months? We have new people. A little bit, okay, more than 6 months. I know we got some veterans in here. I know we got some old beta people days too. Cool, okay, awesome, excellent. All right, and by show of hands, how many of you have ventured into the time travel arena and gave it a try before? Have you actually experimented with it a little bit? Yeah, okay. Flight histories? Played around with the flight histories? All right, cool, good, good. Yeah, this is really where the flight history, I think especially, is a very powerful, unique tool. Time travel mode is great for, doing, kind of, it's sort of on the nose, going back in time and looking at flight stuff. But the flight history reporting is really, I think, a pretty powerful, dynamic, intelligence sort of tool. And there's some steps to bring that, to get it, ready to do the good reporting, but we'll cover all that. Anyway, okay, good. So, format for today, for those who have not been to one of these before, feel free to unmute yourself at any time to ask any questions. Just interrupt me or wait till I'm kind of a nice pause point. I encourage questions throughout. It's not a problem. And again, please leave any feedback that you like in the chat window. If you do have a question that you want to leave in chat and I don't necessarily see it, somebody grab my attention, unmute and just read it off. That'd be fine. Okay, we've already did a good sound check and the mouse movement is okay. So let me go over the agenda real quick. We're going to start off with time travel mode, cover the basics of switching in and out of time travel mode and the impacts of that. We'll talk about the limitations, expectations of what you can do in time travel mode, how far back the data goes. We will talk about how to set up the starting time and date in time travel mode, and then the various playback controls, how to go forward and back in time, how to set your speed and the step rate, etc. And we'll go into a little bit more detail that I've covered here, but that's for time travel will be the first part. Second part will be flight history reporting. We'll talk about how you can get set up for flight history reporting, the various settings and how to run the reports, and then the report results. As you can kind of see here on the left, we'll break down what each of those mean and how to use that effectively as well. And of course, we've got time for Q&A throughout. All right. Let's get to my agenda here. Okay, cool. So any initial questions before we get started? Feel free to unmute and just chime on in. All right. Good, good, good. Okay, so you can see SkyGlass in my background here. I'm in flight history mode, so I'm just going to clean that up. I'm going to switch back into standard mode, and you'll probably be, I'm assuming you all mostly hang out on mill mode, so I'm going to do that first. I don't know why my screen is showing let me lower my hand. There we go. I think there's a bit of AI or something. It saw me raise my hand and popped it up. I don't know. Anyway, so we're starting out in military mode. Just as a reminder, military mode is worldwide. There is no home location that is important in that step or in this mode, and there is no search radius. That does change when we get into time travel mode. So I'm going to make my UI absurdly large. I'm going to hide the HUD. And I'm going to keep the pop-up help on for this segment, just so you can hopefully, catch a little bit of info from that too. All right, so the first thing you're hold on a second. There we go. First thing you're going to want to do is, how do we get into time travel mode? Time travel mode is an advanced tool, and the advanced pop-up menu is hidden behind this gear airplane network, sort of super complicated, sort of tell you this is some advanced stuff under this thing. So we click there, you'll see a new pop-up. Let me clean up some of the other ones. I'll turn off traces. I'm going to turn off auto refresh. I'm going to turn off the sliders. And just so you can see, here is the advanced options pop-up. And the two that we're mostly dealing with here are on the left. The first one is time travel mode, sort of classic, and flight history is the second one. I'll say now, and we'll talk a little bit more about this. Flight history is sort of a derivative of time travel mode. It requires to be in time travel mode to do that work. So you'll see some of the things, you'll see some of the same elements on screen when you're in flight history mode, and some of those are needed. But for now, we're going to go into time travel mode. So that is the big Earth globe with a clock on it. Simply click that, and then we're going to get a warning, which gives you kind of an idea of what's happening here. So we're going to enter time travel mode, and that's going to do a couple things. First, it's going to kick you out of live traffic mode, which sort of makes sense. It is going to switch you into standard mode. It's going to force that. Okay, so you cannot be in mill mode when you're in time travel mode. That's an important distinction. And then it's going to, do a burn. It's going to clear the screen and set it all up. Okay to proceed. We'll say okay. All right. So a couple things just happened, as you noticed. First, we've got this new window, big pop-up with the time travel flight history date and time picker, and we've got some controls here as well. And then since we've entered into standard mode, the standard mode sort of things happen, which is you've got this location pop-up at the bottom with a search radius. All right, so as we remember, standard mode, which is time travel, is in standard aspect. You've got to be in, have a search radius and a proper home location determined. Okay, so somebody want to throw out a home location in chat, and I'll zoom there. We'll start off there. Who's quick on the keyboard? Here we go. I'll take a drink while we're waiting. Anyone, throw out a home location. Give me your home city or somewhere of something of interest.
Waxhaw, North Carolina.
Okay, there we go. Oh, sorry. So I asked in chat. Appreciate that, Marty. But all right. So Deltona, Florida is the winner. I'm going to copy that. I asked for a chat so I could just copy paste. That's what All right, so I'm going to paste that into our home location input box here. I can either now click on the target or hit enter on my keyboard. I'm going to hit enter, and then boom, that happens. So let me move it off to the side here so we can see. All right, so the last search distance radius that I had dialed in was 100. You can see that dialed into the map as we go. So as you may have learned in the intro class, for standard mode, because most likely you're going to be, doing something on a smaller scale, meaning you zooming into the map. I'm going to do that now. So I'm going to put the map up a little bit more, and I'm going to bring the search radius down to, let's keep it at 100 miles. So we'll have good, nice, tight data. All right, get my map zoom worked here. All right, great. So it's a little bit off center just because, I've got these big menus here, but that should work. All right, so I'm also going to tune our sliders. As you may remember, when you zoom in on the map, anything that's been relatively height pushed off the top is going to be not visible. So I like to bring that down so that we know we're going to get, visibly all the aircraft. Okay, good. So this is about right. Let me bring this a little bit smaller. All right, readable for everybody? Good. Okay, great. All right, so we're prepped in the sense of we've got a home location set. Now we just need to figure out the time and the date. So couple limitations with the time travel mode, we'll talk about the how far the data goes back. So March of 2020 is when the data in full nice resolution happens. And that the resolution, as I say, you may know, is every 5 seconds, there is a global snapshot. And that's the data base, I guess you could say, the archive of data that we're able to access. And then, through the different API calls, I can dial in the location and radius and get a subset of that. But it's basically every 5 seconds is the minimum resolution. There is a higher resolution that was introduced sometime earlier or late last year, which I'm working to integrate, which is like 10 times a second. It's crazy high. Yeah, that's going to be, for if you really want to look at like, what happened on an approach pattern, something like that in very, very tight detail for some users, that will be available. I'm developing that. But for right now, every 5 seconds going back, over 3 years, March of 2020 going forward. So the other limitation that you need to be aware of is, well, no, actually that's in flight history mode, so we're not going to cover that here. From current moment back about an hour, the data is still sort of being, scrubbed through the system and accumulated and archived. So you may not get full resolution just in the last bit of time. Hey, Greg, I'm going to mute you just so we can not get any cross chat there.
Yeah, okay.
Or you can mute yourself. I can't seem to mute you. Oh, there it is, the mute button. There we go. Okay, good. So as I was saying, so the data going back from this moment to about an hour, it may, it'll have data about every minute, but you may not get the 5 seconds mark until you've gone back in time a little bit. And the time travel mode, if you start now and go backwards, playing back in reverse, it does sort of account for that. The SkyGlass will hunt for the next piece of data and then go from there, depending on your settings. Okay, so let's just dial in. Let me just step it back a couple of days. So one thing also to note, the time options here in the bottom, we've got obviously year, date, month and day, hour, minute, second. This is going to be in 24-hour clock, and this is dialing the UTC time. Okay, if after you've set your home location, this home time will do a calculation, but you just need to be aware of that these buttons and these inputs, like if I change this to 15, that's affecting the UTC, and then the home is calculated. Okay, so your levers here for your time, month, date, etc., minute, second, this is adjusting the UTC time, and then the home is calculated to show you. So if you're like, something passed over my house at 9:30 in the morning, you sort of dial it in and then go, okay, let's back this up, to a certain date, time, etc. Okay, so we've got, just as a random example, we've got 9:30-ish in this area in Florida, and our let me just talk about the controls. So we've got a forward and back, sort of like a cassette player, recording. We've got a stop button, which arrests the playback, and then you've got this reset time and date. And what that does is it actually just brings it back to now. So we don't want to hit that right now, since we've taken some time to dial in a certain date and time. And so the only other thing that you should check before you actually, do this is, what's my mission here? Am I looking at all aircraft? Do I want to look at just military? Do I want to look at just masked aircraft? Because we're in standard mode, those AC classes, which is governed by this pop-up here, this filter pop-up, normies, military, masked, and emergency. I'll turn the emergencies back on. Those are also, operable in in time travel mode. All right. So for our reasonable reasons here, and again, just as a review, if you turn off the normies, then you can really scale up your search distance radius based on the performance of your computer. If you want the normies on, then you'll want to keep that nice and low. Anything more than about 150, 200 miles, depending on the metropolitan area, you're going to get it up over, 500, 600, 700 aircraft, and it's going to bog down your system. Again, all based on performance. Okay, so one small note here, you can dial in the time and date and pull a snapshot. That's one way to get started. So this would be an approach if you want to go like, am I really getting what I want here or not? Kind of test the water in a sense. Have I got the rest of my settings dialed in? So in this case, I'm going to want to bring the height radius down a little bit when this finishes loading. So we get everybody. All right. I'll do a quick count. So we're at 450. That's a lot of aircraft for, especially if I'm trying to be in live as demo mode. So I'm going to tune this down, or I'm going to bring it down to 50. And a couple other things before we get going. The burn button. So like in this case, I'm like, I want to back off and kind of start again. If I do a burn, it will clear the screen, but it's also going to reset my clock. So you need to be aware of that. In this case, I'm going to not do the burn, and I'm going to let the sweeper clear those out as we go into playback mode. As a refresher, the sweeper basically does a clearing of anything that hasn't been updated in the last 3 refresh cycles. Okay, so I think this tuned in nice and tight now. We got 50 miles on the radius. The sizes are nice and readable. The height is, I'm getting pretty much all the flight lines and flight levels. That looks pretty good. So what I'm going to do now is just go in forward mode. I'm going to push the forward playback button. I haven't changed the defaults as far as speed and step. So let's let that load and load a few cycles, and then we should see all the outside traffic go off screen here in a second. And you'll notice if your debug window's on, you're going to get a default, a little bit of feedback on the timing and if it's, when it's downloading data, etc. How long that took. Yeah, and you can see the other traffic cleared out. And now that we're sort of at a manageable level, you'll see things start to move with the timing. All right. I'm just going to mouse over and mouse in a little bit closer. Okay, so first thing I want to talk about as this is moving forward in the playback, you'll notice, the time is incrementing each time it goes through a cycle. If I were to turn off normies, if we just wanted to look at military, this thing would pick up quickly. It's not in like a nice steady playback speed. It's sort of dependent on, I got to go load the data, I got to process the data, I got to render the data, and then am I done? Okay, now we're going to go for the next round. So as you change what you're trying to display, it may change the sort of, feedback. The speed basically is how much time is going to sort of delay before it starts to go for the next round. So if you're wanting to sort of really kind of, turtle through it, you can turn the speed down, which means it's going to wait maybe a second or a couple seconds between the next round beginning. If you bring this all the way up, it's not going to wait at all, and it's going to go as fast as it can. I don't recommend this unless you've got, you know that you're going to be working with very small amounts of data. If you're on a sort of remote area like down in Mexico or something, doesn't have a lot of traffic, or you're peeled back the normies or something like that. The step is probably going to be, more of a better lever for you as far as what your mission is. If your goal is to troll for something and you're going to want to move through, the time segment faster, then you can step this up from 5 seconds, which again is the minimum resolution, up to several minutes, up to 15 minutes. That's the biggest jump that I've sort of dialed in. And if you go to like 1 minute, that's a nice easy one, because basically, if an aircraft flying, even a commercial aircraft flying at 400 knots, it's not going to traverse the entire 50 miles within a minute. It may take longer than that, or it should. you get what I'm trying to say here is you want to get something that actually is going to come up on screen and not pass all the way through. Again, depending on what you're trying to do. If you're just trying to look at traffic with, came over a certain area at a certain time of day and you wanted to kind of figure out what that was, you saw something while you were driving, let's say, then the step may or may not be important. You want to keep that low, etc. All right. Conceptually, is this making sense? Do I need to review anything or I'm getting some nods? All right. Good. Okay, cool. All right. So the sweeper is important. There's my hand again. Let me take that down. All right. The sweeper is can be useful in this, again, depending on what your mission is. You may want to disable the sweeper if you're wanting to, look at a specific area and catch all the flights that came through and not have them scrub off the screen. At one point when Davos, the meeting in Davos was happening, I can't remember what they call that. I think it's just called Davos. Anyway, what I'm saying, I captured, 24 hours and just let it scrub, preceding the event to kind of try and get a sense of all the different, private jets that were coming into a certain area. In that case, I left the sweeper off so that nothing would get scrubbed off. And then I could kind of go through and get my counts and kind of thumb over the data and look at, add things to my watch list, etc. But for the most part, you'll probably want to just keep the sweeper on. That's what I recommend for most use, unless you want to use that sort of special use case. Okay, so you can see things are kind of, moving okay. I'm going to turn off the normies so you can just kind of get a sense of the speed difference in the loading and the stepping. And I'm going to make this a little bit smaller just so we get a little bit faster go here. And again, we're at 2 minutes. Let me bring this down to like 30 seconds. So we'll kind of see things, move across the screen in time. You can go, with mass, you're going to get a lot more than military, again, depending on your area. If you're over Atlanta or something, you get a lot of trainers. Let me step up the search radius as well, back up my camera. Some of this is network dependent. It's going to be based on, the load out at ADSB Exchange and your internet speeds, etc. But here you can kind of see, things step through, through the sky as we go along here. Also keep in mind, if you've stepped back a day and you're moving forward, things may look a little strange once you've caught up to your current time. So you just be mindful if you're depending on the direction that you're scrubbing or playing back. All right. So I will also tell you, let me go ahead and stop playback. So we're just going to freeze at this moment, 10:20 in the morning over Florida. Traces are operable in time travel mode. All right, so we can go ahead and turn on traces. I'm going to bring this depth down to something. I'm going to turn my jumper off just so it's not going to pop the screen around and pull a few traces. And by pulling traces, I'm just clicking on those aircraft. You can also do the all. As with the normal standard mode, traces are not dependent on the search radius. Aircraft that are loading are in that search radius, but if you go, an hour and they flew outside that radius, you'll get that track all the way back. Okay, and as you're playing, let me go ahead and play forward here. As you're playing, the traces will, just like in standard mode or in non-time travel mode, in standard mode, you'll continue to update, get those traces updated. Again, as you probably know, traces add to the load. So your overall speed of timing is going to get a little slower. You may just want to adjust that by doing a larger step rate, etc. All right. Oh, somebody just sent me a text. That doesn't matter. All right. So let's see here. Let me go back to my notes. All right. So we've talked about the AC classes being a very important part of how to tune your data. Let me go ahead and turn off the traces and bring those. I'm going to go back to 50 miles. Yeah, let's go back to 50. And turn the normies back on. Let me dial in a different location. I used to live in Tucson. Let's go to Tucson. And see that. All right, in a second, that'll start populating in this area. Oop, I think I spelled it wrong, didn't I? I think it actually figured it out anyway. Tucson. Okay. All right, so we've got a little bit, less of a dense area. Probably should be updating a little bit faster. All right. So the one thing I wanted to make sure that everybody knew, while you're in time travel mode, I have not trapped out the ability to pull up the watch list, meaning that's a no-no. Watch list only will load what's happening in real time. And so you can open this up while you're in time travel mode, but your data is going to get all crossed, right? Your watch list is loading now and not in time travel mode. So I haven't, in the next version, I will be trapping out. You won't be able to open up your watch list while you're in time travel mode because you shouldn't be able to do that. So just keep in mind, you cannot do, at least at this point, it's going to take some significant development to do, specific watch list trolling for time travel. But you can do that in flight history, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Okay. All right. So we talked about sweepers and traces being operative. Watch list is a no-no. That's a stay away from while you're in time travel mode. That's going to mess you up. All right. Okay, cool. So any questions? Making sense. All right, great. So let's work an example. Let's do the Nord Stream. Yeah, that might be a pique some interest for people. Okay, good. So let me, I'm going to stop the time travel playback mode. I'm going to hit burn, which is going to reset my clock and clear the screen. I'm going to simulate, well, I'll show you how to get out of time travel mode. There's a couple ways of getting out of time travel mode. One way is to say, I want to go into standard mode or mill mode, and it's going to say, hey, you're in time travel mode. Do you want to exit? And you can say, yep, I want to exit, and that's going to clear the time travel picker. And since I wanted to go into mill mode, it cleaned up the screen and set me into mill mode. Let me do that again, just so that we kind of get a rinse and repeat here. I'm switching now into time travel mode. I'm going to hit proceed. That's going to pull up, force us into standard mode, which brings up our location chooser. And we've got the date time picker. The other way to exit time travel mode is just to close the time picker. And you can see the little X in the top left-hand corner of that. So if I click on that, it's going to set me into time travel mode or into standard mode. You'll also notice, let me go back into time travel mode again, proceed. Okay, what was I going to say there? Well, let me ignore that. So again, clicking on the close button for the time travel date time picker will bring you back into standard mode. And that's going to clear the aircraft, etc. Okay, so let's dial in Nord Stream. So let's see. First thing we'll do a location. You can do the time, but I'll do the location first. Let's go to the Baltic Sea. And our map zoom is already nice and tight. Okay, and so as you may have seen the recording that I was playing beforehand, I chose the center location as this little island, this little Denmark island. So I'm just going to do that now. I'm going to turn the jumper on. I'm going to double click on this island and make this my home. All right. All right, so we've got north here. Actually, no, I think it was here. Let me see. I wrote it down. Let me dial it in. So the name of this was AAKIRKEBY, Denmark. Oh, yeah, I was in the wrong location. Okay, good. All right, this little island. All right, so, and let me dial up the size a little bit more. I'm going to back the camera up. All right. Okay, so, and you know what? If you just hold a second, let me bring that video up one more time. I'm just going to double check my settings here. Yeah, I did have the normies off. Okay, so yeah, in this case, I was just looking for military aircraft. Depending on, again, your mission, you may or may not want to have the normies on. So I'm going to turn off my normies here. I'm going to make the search radius a little bit larger, just so we're going to know we're going to capture some stuff. Okay, and let's dial in the date. So I'm going to turn on time travel mode, and this was 9/26/22. All right. So with this date time picker, I find the up down arrows, useful, but these are input boxes as well. So you can hit, click on it, enter in something, and then you can tab to the different fields. All right. So this was 9/26. And again, we're in UTC. So this was 0 dark 30. All right. Okay. Sorry about that. Let me start this over again. All right. So this is 9/26. Oops. All right. And we're at 0 hour and 30 minutes. All right, and I think I just stepped it out at 1 minute, but we'll start at 30 seconds. Okay, and let me reduce the UI, and I'm going to start playback. I honestly can't remember the name of the aircraft, so I'm going to bump this up to, but, oh, and the other thing I did here was I turned on traces, and I'll turn them all on. And so we'll see everything come in with a trace. Yeah, the P8 was the type. What I was referring to as the call sign. I can't remember exactly what the call sign was. It could have been an NA, if I'm remembering right. It could have been masked. All right, so let me just make sure I've actually dialed everything in right. 9/26/2022. Yep. Yep. Okay. All right, so it was at 1:25 when this stuff started to actually come in. So I'm going to step the step up a little bit more to like 1 minute. All right, we got a little bit of traffic coming in here. I'm also going to turn the labels on so we can see the type and the call sign. Yeah, I think this is the refueler. Part 12. Yeah, so here we go. The aircraft that was, doing its business, I think we all figured out it was a P8, but I don't know that it was transponding as with its type disclosed. So it may have been this NA. I can't really remember. I think this is it. Yeah, and this isn't it. Let me turn on the HUD so we can see what we got here. Yeah, this is the traffic. So as you can see, let me increase the sizes here so it's a little easier to see. Here we've got this, we've got a rendezvous coming up. So remember, it got fuel first. And this was the tanker, the refueler. Is this readable for everybody? Can see what was going on? All right, good. Kind of a fun example. Such an interesting time we live in. All right, so you can see the little NA took off, diverted a little bit, and start to come back. Cruises right over that area. Back up. I think I might be getting some additional traffic here that's loading traces on the backside. Yeah, a little bit. That's right. Okay. So you'll see you'll come in, start marshaling around. We've got the dog, little dog track, as monkeys likes to say. So you'll notice first it was reporting with like all A's. I don't think it actually is reporting, broadcasting that all A's. I'm not sure in the ADSB system how that's necessarily dealt with. Here you can see, look at him doing his little catch up here, and you can see it changes. So the data, I think NA is obviously accurate, meaning that it wasn't getting reported. Look at that, you can see it picked itself up there. Now it's getting its refueling. And let's see, we're at 25,000 feet, just under. Oh, so I'm going to turn off my sweeper. This is important because I know in this instance, the offender, the P8 that was doing its business, it dropped off screen, meaning it stopped reporting, and I think it either went dark or did something. And so point is, if your sweeper was on and it went dark, then it'll be removed and the trace will be lost as well. Right? Not that you can't get it back, but just depending on what you're trying to do. I wanted to keep the traces up the whole time, whether it went on or off screen. So you'll see when it finally gets out over to the Baltic and then drops off, it just hovers in space because the sweeper isn't on. So it just this is the last known location. And then after about 15, 20 minutes, then it started to pick up and bug out off west. Is that making sense? Sort of how to use the trace or the sweeper effectively, depending on what you're trying to do? All right, good. And, depending on what you're doing, time travel mode can be a little bit like watching paint dry, wading through a lot of data and time and traces and all this kind of stuff. But, with practice and with some, OSINT, you can really dial in specifics. One thing I'd like to do eventually is look back over the Arizona audit timing, because there was a lot of aircraft that were doing man-in-the-middle kind of stuff, circles, bunch of and they were every day. We had a couple of PC-12s. Marty, I agree. There were a few aircraft that I kind of wanted to get on my watch list and do some of that work. So maybe, Marty, if you, now that you're empowered with time travel mode, you can go do that and report back on the Discord channel if you find anything interesting. Yeah. One thing I'm also going to be trying to implement, I don't know if it's going to be in this version, but ultimately I'd like to do a way to do a screen recording, not just a screenshot, so that we can share these kinds of data, as well as an ability to pull, like if I wanted to pause here and say, hey, I wanted to pass this setup to a friend or share it on social, you'll be able to do that. Probably won't be able to share it on social actually, but I can export this, the settings as a JSON file, and then you can open that up and kind of go right to this point in time in this setup, so you can kind of see what's happening. Okay, so now we see our NA is starting to bug out to do its business. BART 12 is going to finish its refueling and going to take off as well. This is some cool stuff, huh? All right, you'll see. So we're watching for that elevation drop. From what I remember, the monkey was talking about, in order for it to deploy, it had to drop down. So we'll see it do its drop here in a second. So we're at about 2:43 a.m. UTC, 3:45 local time. All right, starting to circle, doing a little recon. We think, right? It's like, are we safe to do our work here? Or do we have our frogs in the water or not? All right, and I think this is where we see the drop in elevation. Yep, there it is, right there. Boom, boom, boom. All right, so now it's down at 17,000 and descending. Hooks a loop, comes back. Now we're at 14.3. I think this is really where it was doing its stuff, right? And then stops reporting. Notice it's not getting updated and our time is moving forward. I've turned off the sweeper. So this is when, so my estimation, again, I'm not an Air Force guy. I don't have any real world experience in this arena, but they went dark at this point to really go do their stuff. And then they'll pick back up I think in 15, 20 minutes is when they start transponding again. And then they just, circle the area a little bit over this side and then bug out. Cool. All right. Was that useful? Yeah. Interesting stuff. Do we all feel like spies now? OSINT experts. All right, cool. Excellent. Okay, great. So any questions about time travel mode before I move off from this example? Let me get a drink of water too.
Okay, the 4 icons at the top of the window there, I understand back, forward, stop, and then the one on the right looks like it does a reset.
Exactly right. Yeah, it just resets the time. So if I were to click on that, it's going to change the time to now, or it just happened. Yeah. Reminds me of that. Remember, anybody see Spaceballs? Remember that? Now, it's happening now. Not then, now. We're watching right now. All right, good stuff. All right, cool. Hey, does anybody remember the time, the dates and times of the audit, the Arizona audit? I couldn't remember, and I hadn't really done the sleuthing on that. But if we want to work another example at the end, I'm happy to go back and we can start trolling for a little bit of that. That might be a fun example to do. Anyway, and again, if I would have turned the sweeper on, then this aircraft, this NA, would have popped off screen and would have lost its trace. Whereas if I keep it on, once he sort of re-engages in this timing or starts transponding again, we'll see him pop out off screen. Okay. I'm sure somebody's going to be searching for that. Okay, great. So any more questions before we move on to the flight history? Okay, groovy. Unless you want me to keep this going and we'll just wait for it. But I think you all can do this on your own. I'll let you do that. All right, good. So I'm gonna hit stop. And I'm gonna hit the reset. You'll notice that the stop was effective when one of them isn't green. It's not quite so obvious, and I should probably make that button a little more like punchy, give a little more feedback. But anyway, and then clicking on the reset, you'll notice now we're now. Then, now. Okay, good. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and clear the screen. I'm going to burn, and let's talk about time travel. I'm sorry, flight history mode. Okay, so let's get back into sort of a regular mode here. I'm going to bring up my favorite locations and bounce back over. Conus, notes my the different labels, the types, and all right, you'll notice. So yeah, it started to really get slow because I had forgotten to turn off the all traces most likely. So this is a good example. When you can get mouse control back, you can hit that stop button, and then that'll kind of stop doing whatever it was doing. I can do another burn, get my mouse, my map set up as I want. All right, good. All right, so couple different ways. So let me get a snapshot of the military traffic, and let me get the flight levels popped up again. Okay, and I'll get something loaded on the HUD. All right, great. So we got the C-17 vinyl 50. All right, so you'll notice there is a flight history icon, which is the hourglass, like sands through the hourglass, that you can do a flight history on a single aircraft. If you see it in the HUD, you can do it this way. I'm going to just grab its hex code while I'm here. So I'm going to hover over the hex code till it turns green, click on it. Now that's been put on my clipboard just so I can show you how to work the example. But if you want to do a flight history report on a single aircraft, you can do it through the HUD. So let's say, okay, cool, let's go get his flight history. I'm going to click on that. It's going to say, yep, we're going to switch into flight history mode, which requires a burn and some other things. We want to say, yep, okay. It's going to clear the screen and it's going to load up the last flight history that I had. So let's just talk about that now. I'm going to burn in the flight history header, which just basically clears the results. Okay. And you'll notice that the call sign of this aircraft and its hex code are dropped into this window here. And it's the only hex code that exists. And so we could run a report based on that. The default is 30 days, but you can dial this up to any number, actually. So long as you're not going past the 2 years. So, 780 or something would be the number that it would start to not work. But let's just do a 10-day, keep it easy. Let me talk about these other icons and elements in the header. So our date input is there. We're going to, it starts with the day time that you've put into the date time picker and then goes back, right? So this would start in the now, because we've got it dialed in for now, going back 10 days. But you can, again, go back. We can go back that last year and, start the 1st of June and go 10 days back from there. You can dial the date time picker start time at anything you'd like, and then it goes back in number of days based on this input. Make sense? Okay, great. The next button here, that's what actually executes or initiates the reporting. So we'll wait on that. This button is the traces. It's on by default, which means when it finds a flight that existed and then it starts to process that flight, it's going to render that trace on screen as it goes. You can turn that off and get the full list and then turn on the traces individually. It all depends on your mission here. So I'm going to go ahead and leave this on, and I'm going to hit go. So it's going to go through and start looking for stuff. And it didn't find anything. Let's go 30 days. Oh, not 1300. Let's go 30 days. And we've got that right. All right, let's try that again. Oh, you know what? I didn't. So let me stop and I'm going to reset the timing. I think I was looking at last year. So let's look now through the last 10 days of this C-17. Okay, so now we've got the traces on. We've got our time set correctly. All right, let's run the report. Okay, great. As it starts to find data, it will start doing the entries. So let me talk about each entry and what it means. So we've got, let's see, 10 different elements here. Top line, we've got the date and the start time of the trace when it was first detected. And then it will do a reverse geocode lookup on the location and give the sort of, normal vector to the nearest metropolitan area. In this case, 3 miles east-northeast of Flowood. I have no idea where Flowood is. And then this is the registration, the tail number. We'll work another example where we're doing flight histories on a group. And so you may not know what flight, what aircraft in that group was, showing this trace. So that will tell you what the N number is. And then this will show you the duration of this flight. I will tell you this, the SkyGlass is not yet smart enough to discern legs. meaning if this thing, went from Tucson to Wichita, Wichita to DC in a day, it's going to just it'll show the trace, but it doesn't break it up into different legs. Okay. In the same way, if the trace happens to be, if it's flying at night over midnight UTC and it pops into the next day, then that's going to be a different flight leg, or in a sense, or a different flight that's going to record. So if it's an overnight kind of flight and long in duration, you'll see it might be, brought over different, it might span different days. And in the same way, if like some of these C-17s that are going, go over and across the drink, et cetera, C-130, something like that, long haulers, if they're flying, and they do several hops in a day, refuel, and then they're flying at night, you may see their flight time be 23 hours, 59 minutes, because it was basically up most of that day, got some refueling, whatever, but it's, the legs are sort of broken up by the UTC time date changeover. All right. Is that making sense? Kinda? Ian is wrinkling his nose. All right. If you got any question, just stop me, no problem. Okay, so this aircraft, since pretty simple example, we did a 10-day. It's got 3 days of flying. As I just was describing, we got a couple of different legs here, boom, 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 moving around. So it's going to grab its first location of the day and give it here. So in the entries here, we've got 3 different icons at the bottom. We've got these chevrons. This is where it took off. So if you click on this button, it's going to change your map, and you can zoom into, this is where it departed. And then this was the last trace of the day. Click on that other one. So this one was probably mid-flight. Yeah, there you can see that the trace sort of ended there. Probably picked up, let's see, pick up in the same. Probably picked up the, well, no, it actually, well, let's see, the 20, we started on the 20 and 6-2. Okay. That was yesterday, and then 5 days before. Well, it could have just lost its trace. There's a number of reasons why it may have stopped, reporting the location. But anyway, that's what its location was. Let's see. The other way you can kind of do a little bit of discerning here is bring the flight trace down and go, well, that's probably pretty close to ground level. Not really sure. Stretching these things up kind of does skew the visual reference. So you may want to infer, I mean, this definitely looks like a landing pattern, right? So this probably just doesn't pick up the last boop as it, actually came into ground. One enhancement I am looking to do in the next version. So let me get some feedback here. What do you think this is a good idea or not? I'd like to be able to, as you hover over the trace dot, the segment, it'll actually give time, date, and altitude. And some other, the telemetry and maybe the aircraft, so you can know, kind of like you see in ADS-B or some of these other flight trackers where you hover and it actually shows the time that it was at that position. I think that's a nice enhancement. Okay, I'm getting a nod. Ren's give me a nod. Okay, couple happy. Yep. All right, good. All right, so I'll make sure that gets in there if it's possible. I'm sure it is. Anything is possible in SkyGlass. Okay, great. So this probably we've probably beat this example to death. So let me close the flight history. Now we're going to be back in standard mode. Oh, one thing I did want to mention, you'll notice is if we go into flight history mode, one visual indicator, you'll notice that the aircraft icon on top of the main button stack load button has gone transparent. So sort of tell you, hey, you're not, you're in flight history mode, you're not in live mode. If we close that flight history window, we're back into live mode. All right, so now let's do, let me open up my watch list and bring the size down so we can see some stuff. Let's let that marinate, as they say. All right, and so let me collapse the watch list group so we get to see who's here. And all All right, somebody want to throw off an example here. So here's my current watch list. You can see the ones that are active or not. Just to orient you, I've done a little bit of digging through the database. If you were in my database live stream, you remember that, and separated out some of these department fleets, Department of State, Department of Interior, DHS, DOJ, et cetera, et cetera. Anybody want to do a group in particular? All right, do the trace colors mean anything? Jim, I will get to that question, you bet. And this actually, this will be a good example, depending on the group that we choose. Anybody want to throw out a group that you want to look at and do a flight history for? Make that a little bit larger. So the mill and tail balloons will not, State Department. All right, Department of State. Let's do that. All right, so we got to, all right, this will be a long one. So I'm not going to go deep into the duration, but in the same way that you've got the hourglass in the HUD, we've got an hourglass button here. Clicking on that will start the process of a flight history for that group. And so you'll notice now when this flight history window opens, I'm going to burn so we clear the results. Now you'll notice there's just a bunch of little tiny hex codes that have been popped into this input panel. All right. So this is all 96 of those aircraft that were in that group. So let's just do a 10-day. And well, we'll see how it goes. All right. So we're starting now. I'm going to reset to now, 10 days. All right. I'm going to hit go. All right. So while this is running, to answer Jim's question, do the trace colors mean anything? So yes, they do. Different trace colors represent the different aircraft types. Okay, trace colors are mapped to the type of aircraft that it is, meaning if two of the same type aircraft are flying, they're going to have the same trace color. The trace colors are all definable. You can update those, and you can do it. You can define a start trace and an end trace color, so you can get a sort of feeling of, start and end. All right, so we're getting a lot here. You'll notice the other thing, we're getting a count as it progresses, and because we had the trace button on, you'll see these traces sort of move in as they render or as they populate. Okay, great. This is a good example. In a few of these, you'll notice in the entry, it doesn't actually finish. Something crashed in the data or something crashed in the process. It was not able to get the time on or off or or finish, do the reverse geocodes, etc. It probably didn't paint its trace. You'll notice the trace button is off. Here's another example of one that didn't quite, make it. I will say this is the, while, I've done a fair amount of development on it. This is kind of its first iteration of time travel in the flight history mode. So this one will definitely get some better, error trapping, and I'll work on, finding these, but it's sort of kind of a brute force approach, just kind of grabs the data and tries to do it, moves on, et cetera, et cetera. But anyway, so that'll improve over time, but that's what that means. If it doesn't finish, it just didn't, something in the data probably, crapped out on us or errored out. Okay, great. So it looks like it's complete. Our little progress bar is closed, so we know we're done. And for that fleet, we've got 25 flights. So if I back up here, yeah, it looks like everything was just over the sort of East Coast-ish. So let's dial in a little bit closer. Let's see, we've got, what I'm going to do is turn the size down so we can see the traces a little bit easier. And yeah, somewhere near Kingsport, Johnson City. I'm not really familiar with this area. What is this? Is that Kentucky? No, Tennessee. Okay. Northern Tennessee, Southern Kentucky. Roanoke, that's Virginia. That makes sense for State Department. Okay. So one enhancement that I'm also going to be trying to make is being able to tune these colors while you're in flight history mode. The only place to do that now, to change the type, the color, the trace colors for the different types, is through the type panel when you're in live mode. Okay. Ultimately I'll be working on a way to change the color of the trace, you know, like from here in some way. Haven't quite sorted out the detail there. But you can also see we've got various N numbers and their durations, etc. All right, good. Fair example. You'll notice Monkey's been doing a lot of these flight, the survey flights. Let's go ahead and work one of those examples. I'm going to burn this just so we clear the screen and our returns, close the flight history panel. I'm going to open up our watch list. And I know that I'm probably a week or so out from Monkey's last published watch list. I think he probably has some more, but this one has 336. So let me grab that group. Now that's in our flight history window. And let's do not 65. Let's just do 5 days. And let's start it. Let's go back a month. Just for the kicks of it. All right, so let me get my view to where we can really see it. Okay, this might be a good example of, I'm going to turn off the show all tracers as they go button, and I'm going to start to run the report. And now you'll see all the trace buttons are off, but if I just click on it and then go to the start location, now we can see it's the trace. Now I will tell you, this button is actually a flip. It flips the switch on all the returns that are there. Meaning if you click it, you know, when I'm going to let this thing finish. Actually, no, I'm not going to let it finish. You can see this thing's really crawling along. Well, with 325 aircraft, it's going to take a while, even at just 5 days. So I'm going to go ahead and stop so we can work with the returns that we've got. So we've got 21 here, and you'll notice, let me back the map up. And I'm going to make these nice and legible. So I'm increasing the size, which increases the thickness of those traces. I'm going to bump the size up, and I'm going to flip the switch. Now, anything that was currently rendered is unrendered, and anything that was not rendered, now it's turned on and now rendered. Does that make sense? So we had that one at the top. I'm going to go ahead and just manually turn him back on. So now we can see, you know, the first day or two that was rendering. All right, so this might be interesting for you. So I'm just going to click on the starting location, bring my map in so we can get these nice little shoestrings. Yeah, that's a nice tight group. I think this guy was hand flying though. This doesn't look like that doesn't look like autopilot to me. He was a hand jockeying on that one. That takes some effort. You can see this one's a little cleaner, but some of these are going to be look definitely like manual. Could also just be data. Not as many feeders in that area, so the MLAT's not going to be as accurate. But anyway, bring this down. Yeah, like this guy. Wow, that's really just so smooth. Look at that. And interesting that they, you know, I think it was to do this kind of sleuthing. It's not a full box grid, right? So they've definitely done some planning over some sort of geography, because you can see you know, it looks like it follows that, this could be some sort of river or other topographic element. Anyway, you could probably, let's do that. Let's pull up the sat image and see if we can figure that out a little bit. Bring this down to ground level. You'll also, just to tell you, so, you know, with 5-second positions on all these aircraft, you can, you know, with hundreds of traces, anytime you do one of these adjustments for the height adjustment slider, it may take some time to because it basically has to re-render, has to go back through and make adjustments to all those. If you've got thousands of these entries, it might take a while. If you've just got one, you can actually like interactively, you know, drag and you can see it move and it's nice and clean. But if you've got a lot, it may take some time. Yeah. All right, so I'm bringing this all the way down. Yeah, I don't really see, this is probably not the best example of like what he was trying to do. But anyway, yeah, definitely covering that metro area. All right. And so I'm just popping around here to see. Oh, there we got some Vancouver stuff. Interesting that these guys are based in Washington and going out into Canada to do their surveying. I don't know what that's about. Interesting stuff. This is a fascinating thread to pull, though, huh? Speaking of traces. All right, any questions? Pat, I see you just dropped in here. Good to see you. Sorry, confused because you said not to have watch list open. Could you show how to load groups in there again? You bet, Teddy. Sorry if I got that wrong, Teddy. Okay, so yes. So if you're in, let me just sort of cover that topic again, just so we're clear. It's a very good question. So if you're in time travel mode, the distinction being right now we're in flight history mode, okay, which is a sort of a derivative of time travel mode. The element of time travel mode that is useful or relevant when we're doing a flight history is the start date of your report. Flight history report being starting at a certain day and going back any number of days based on what you've dialed into the interface. So you'll notice the watch list isn't necessarily open when we're in flight history mode or the time travel mode, but you can initiate time travel. I'm sorry, you can initiate flight history mode from the watch list. Okay, in this example, we use the survey group, which had like 300 aircraft. And so let me do that again. I'll back this out. I'm going to close the flight history mode. I'm going to burn and then close the window, which puts us back into live mode, but we don't have anything active as far as loading data. I'm going to open up my watch list again. And just to show you, so this is how we initiate a flight history report for a specific group. All right, so let me grab a group that's smaller.
How about the Tacoma E6?
E6, good idea. Where are we? E6 Tacoma. Okay, so we got 16 aircraft. I'm going to click on the hourglass in that header. It's going to put me into time travel mode, flight history mode, and it's going to automatically load those hex codes of those aircraft that were in that group into my flight history report interface. All right. Yeah, there they are. Okay, so E6 Tacoma, let's do a 5-day report. I'm going to reset my time to now and run the report. Now these guys are long. Oh, that's 6 hours, not too bad. All right, I'm going to dial these up a little bit so they're easier to see. Okay, so did that clarify your question, Teddy? I can't actually see which one's Teddy. Okay, well, you got it, your camera off, so I can't tell if I did it or not, but okay, great. Excellent. Yeah, this is a great example. Such interesting traces, right? Because they go up, they do long hauls, they do marshalling patterns to do their work, looking over different areas. You can see some of these little loop-de-doops, different flight levels, good stuff. Now, here's an example. Let me make this nice and thick. This is probably two different, this is obviously the same leg, but over a certain, they crossed the UTC date, and so it broke it up into different legs. Good question. Thank you for that. Awesome. Good. Okay. Any other questions? We are winding down. I'm going to go back over my notes here, just make sure we talked about setting the dates. And the durations, good. We talked about the trace toggle. Yep, we talked about the different legs, first in, last out. Okay, and the different interface buttons popping to the start and end locations. All right, cool. I assume data source for this is ADSB Exchange. Yes, absolutely. ADSBX is the prime source for all the location data for all the aircraft, also going back in time. Yep. Yes, sure. So there are a few sources of getting the monkey watch list. And a great segue, another feature that I'm working on, it will be a way for you to, for anyone to share, to publicly share their watch list into the SkyGlass ecosystem. And so then within SkyGlass, you'll be able to look at, pull a list of, hey, who's shared their watch list? You'll be able to, do a thumbs up to like them. So hopefully Monkey will be, when that gets rolled out, he'll be publishing to there. And so you'll just be able to grab it from, directly from SkyGlass. Right now, you can go to his website. I believe in his store, there is a free product. It's a digital download of his watch list. You go to his watch list, you go through the cart, you do all that stuff, you get the download, and then to incorporate it, let me show you how to do that. So let's go back into standard mode. I'm going to open up my watch list, and in the auxiliary watch list button header, you've got a few different buttons here. The two folders are the import and export. And so once you have the file on your computer or on a drive or have it some way accessible, then you click on the blue with the two down chevrons, import, and then you'll be asked, hey, do you want to replace or augment? Okay, so I don't usually replace unless I've already made a backup, right? But you can mesh, blend them, add to your watch list, your current watch list, someone else's list, or you can, trash it and replace it. Yeah, so definitely watch list functionality. It can be very cool to get familiar, export your current list out, have a directory of different lists, pull them in. There is a way to move them from one device to the other through the SkyGlass cloud, just one at a time, which can be useful if you've got, your Android or iPhone in the mix here, or an iPad, something like that. Yeah. Did that answer the question? Okay, great. Oh, other sources. So there is definitely some watch list sharing that goes on in the SkyGlass Discord channel. So that would be another source. And occasionally I or other people will grab Monkey's list and put it up there. There's also some community spots on the AVR Labs website, and people do some stuff there, but that's not quite as active. Discord's really where the action is as far as sharing and stuff like that. All right, so I'm just going to hit add, and then I'm going to cancel this to get out of that. All right, great. And I'll minimize that. Okay, cool. I also find, I like to track the LEOs, the police helicopters and stuff in different areas. So doing flight history reports on that, you can, patrol aircraft or stuff that are doing stuff over specific areas. Okay, Mark Young, having trouble with your subscription. So go to the avrlabs.com website and use the need help button on the bottom right hand of the screen, and that's going to initiate a chat with me, and we can sort out your issue there. Not a problem. If you, some folks, if you've got a VPN on, that can mess with the browser or the web page itself. This is a Wix website that I've used to set that up, and I know that the VPNs totally messes with the CAPTCHA, like prove you're not a robot kind of thing. So for most of SkyGlass can't, the login server can't traverse VPNs as well. So you may have to do that. Anyway, so if the chat isn't working for you because of something other issue, you can also submit a report. I'm sorry, fill out the support form, and you can. That's going to send me an email, and then I can respond, and we can get that going there. Okay, cool, excellent. All right, so covered some great topics today. We went over, just as a little review, we covered time travel mode, how to move in and out of time travel mode. We talked about how long the data goes back, what the limitations are, how to dial in your home location and search radius and the different aircraft classes in order to tune your results. We talked about how to change the playback speed and the step rate. We worked that great example of the Nord Stream pipeline over the Baltic Sea. And then we exercised, the playback controls in various different ways. Then we covered flight history, how to set up the reports, how to run them on a single aircraft, how to run them from the watch list groups. And we did some fun Q&A. All right, unless there's any other questions, we will close it out. This has been super fun, as per always with you guys. I love the interaction. You're very welcome. Good. Okay, we talked about how to reach me. Just to reiterate, the need help button is kind of the best way. It's much faster than an email. I know many of you got my email addresses, but I don't check email that often, and those need help, or the chat button goes right to my phone, right to my wrist. So that's the best way to reach me. And again, I'm East Coast time, business hours with a little extension. I'm usually here 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. ish. Not on Fridays though. I cut out early on a Friday. Anyway, so that's the best way to reach me. Support form also gets my attention. Yeah, if you want to support everything that I have going on with SkyGlass and kind of to help turbocharge the development, there's always merch in the store, which is kind of fun. We got some branded gear. We've got these t-shirts. We've got a bunch of really cool, what we call all over prints, where I've done some traces of different areas and put them on t-shirts and bags and pillows and all this kind of fun stuff. I'm an old artist. I had an animation studio, so I love the artistic stuff. So I kind of went a little nuts with the all over prints. But anyway, merch will support the channel or what I'm doing here. You can also join Patreon if you want to also contribute in that way to the SkyGlass app development. And that'll be it for today. Thank you guys. Have an awesome weekend. You're very welcome. Good stuff. Appreciate you being here. Appreciate the interaction. And next time for the deep dive, please come with any questions you've got. And a final note, if you have not already, please sign up for the monkey business deep dive coming at the end of this month. That's going to be fun. We're going to go over some of the things that he does in his sit reps. Most of them are the flight history, which we've covered today in detail, but we'll do some other things. We'll talk about the watch list, et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, all right, guys, thanks so much.
Thank you, Goa.
You bet. All right, stay frosty.
Too.
Glass out. Cheers.
And out.
Bye.